All right, welcome everybody to our post Oceanwide Shipping Negotiation Analysis show. I'm your host, Spencer Rolland, and I'm sitting here with Hartwell Gex and Anthony Chang. Today we'll be talking about how Regency played that negotiation as a team. Did manager operate well for Regency? What was Regency's communication strategy and was it effective? Then we'll look at Regency's negotiation strategy, how critical it was to their success of the deal, and the key takeaways Regency can have moving forward. So first, I'll pass it off to Hartwell. Hartwell, I know you're looking at the different roles of the players in this negotiation. What did you see out there?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly lay out roles and responsibilities on the Regency side. So manager was really given a clear authority from Regency to execute a deal under certain financial stipulations and didn't necessarily need the approval of the teammates. Um, the R&D team member, development, really had a hard, strong desire to get the X-turbine engines or just the turbines into those machines. Also strongly incentivized to maintain some secrecy around the fuel efficiencies and the lab results was really tantamount to his success for this negotiation with Oceanwide. And then engineer, in charge of minimizing costs, making sure this deal was cost effective from the standpoint of Regency. And so if you look at a little bit of, hey, where are mediations in negotiations valuable, and when is it more effective to have an established leader who can make those final decisions? Well, here Regency felt it was the leader was the way to go, and they established that through their directives with manager. And it certainly doesn't seem like this would be a circumstance where mediation would have been effective with multiple parties, internal conflicts, and things of that nature would have much more likely ended with no deal at all under any circumstance. And so establishing a leader was definitely the right move on Regency's part. And if we'll dive into take a little look at how Spencer did as the manager here. Um, so early on in the initial team meeting, he did a great job building trust through empathy and active listening. Utilized a lot of open-ended questions to identify, what desires the team members of development and the engineer wanted, and then was really able to uncover some key information with those tools in his toolkit, with some probing questions and things like that. And so at the end of the day, even though he didn't need the approval from his teammates to move forward with a deal with Oceanwide, he was able to meet everyone's BATNAs and secure the win for the team, so to speak. And that's what makes a leader's position ultimately fairly difficult at times, is when you have these internal conflicts. You're weighing that in contrast to maybe what's best for the team in that circumstance. But he was able to execute across the board and make that happen for all parties involved.
Great. I think that was some great deep dive analysis there, Harwell. I'll pass it over to Anthony as we kind of look at what did you see as Regency's communication strategy, and do you think that was effective for their deal with Oceanwide?
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. We saw some really good internal coordination with the team in this round here. In terms of information sharing, we saw some great examples of internal information sharing that was really effective. So, for example, we saw Dave Development just being clear about those fuel efficiency numbers. That was really huge, actually, because there were some incentives that Dave had to keep that close to the vest, and he ended up just trusting the team to hold that information. And it did facilitate the team's negotiations. So, engineer had a good analysis of how the different deal formats could affect numbers and had a spreadsheet that facilitated the communication about total value of the deal from the engineering perspective. And manager was transparent about his BATNA as well, that he really just needed to have certain elements of the deal included, and so that the whole team was able to operate in concert around that framework. In terms of communication, um, everyone did kind of have their specific role, and that was discussed. We saw that in the pre-engagement planning there. So manager was assigned the lead negotiator role and pulled in the other two when needed, whether it was for fuel efficiency numbers, Dave got pulled in, or if it was about questions about upgrade kits and different solutions, calculated monetary value engineer got pulled in for those communications as well. So that ended up happening pretty well. Um, when in terms of the communication mediums that were used, we saw that Regency and Oceanwide did have a breakout room utilized that was effective at a key point in the negotiation and allowed both teams to kind of gather their thoughts. And ultimately, that was the time that the final deal format was starting to come into clarity there. Regency also used the private chat, and we saw Dave Mellman and manager kind of pushing the X turbines and engineer kind of pushing various cost limitations, that awareness to the team so that could be kept at the front. Um, and importantly, Dave took that really big risk of sharing those fuel efficiency numbers, and there was some risk about that information getting leaked out, but everyone kept the cards close to their chest, and adhered to the game plan, and deferred to Dave in terms of those company secrets there. So in the end, Regency did not spill the X turbine's fuel efficiency, and that ended up being pivotal in the negotiation.
Do you
We'll hand it
think,
back.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, before we do that, do you think that if Regency did spill the cost efficiency, the negotiation would have gone better for them? Because we know, talking with the other side of the team, that they were kind of talking about like, oh yeah, we didn't trust the other side because they were kind of being stingy with their numbers. Do you think the negotiation would have played out differently if Regency would have shared that?
Yeah, the challenging part is that it was a real tough call for the manager, right? Because it could have decided to disclose that information and it probably would have sped up the negotiation, but I'm not sure it would have worked out better in the end because the numbers that we could promise weren't, I think, the goal for what they were looking for. So I think it would have put the team in a hard position. What do you think, Spencer?
I mean, I think it's one of those things like, yeah, they had the secret, but if you are going to sell the X turbines, don't you think they'll kind of get the fuel efficiency numbers eventually? You know, they're going to be running those engines. They're going to be
That's a good
able to
point.
figure out how much fuel they're going and how far they're able to get with that fuel. So it's one of those things. Yes, at that time it might have been critical of important information, but in the long run, those numbers are going to come out eventually. What are your thoughts, Hartwell? Being very close to the development side.
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit afterwards, and they were pretty staunch on getting to that 6, 7% as quick and fast as possible. And so I wonder to some degree if you release those numbers directly without any sort of future promise of continued development. I mean, maybe they just walk away from the deal completely, right? They
Yeah,
say, hey, you guys can't execute, you're not where you're supposed to be. We're going to find another provider.
Hmm.
Was one of my thoughts. And so
Yeah.
I thought the way, and you guys tell me if you disagree, the way it was presented, even though the hard numbers weren't given, it was with a lot of reassurance of, hey, it's better than what is currently available, and it's consistently getting better over time. And
yeah.
so we'll continue to grow, and this is a very promising technology for the future.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the way that Regency presented it was, in my perspective, very a trustworthy and honest way. But as one person sees it one way, another person going to see it the other way. And I think that kind of goes into our next topic, which was Regency's negotiation strategy critical to their success of the deal? I thought Regency did a great job of managing differences. They conservatively talked about their engines that we were just talking about with the D292s and the X 550s due to the internal issues. But I think if they would have provided information in a different way, maybe kept the D292s more close to their chest and then provided that information later, they could have garnered a little bit more trust. But like I said, that was their game plan coming in, and they stuck to that game plan, and they dealt with that, I think, pretty well. They also provided a lot of mezzos to the other side to try to gain that trust of like sharing that information and, finding a deal that both grew the pot for both sides, but also maybe favored Regency a little bit more. For example, the turbine kits. We came up with a solution with engineer that 8 completed upgrade kits was kind of the same as the 20 turbine upgrades. And so kind of using that information, we could see which side of Oceanwide they liked either the turbines or the completed upgrade kits. And kind of later on in the negotiation, we also played around with the difference between the D292 as well as the X50 550s engines and seeing which side Oceanwide wanted to go with. Um, we also did a lot of quantification of numbers so that Oceanwide could see, how much this would be costing Regency as well. Um, Managing issues, we quickly went to the fuel efficiency side of things and the quantity of the upgrade kits because we knew coming into this negotiation that these were probably going to be the two biggest issues that they had to tackle in order to find success out there on the negotiation field. Fuel efficiency, as we saw, was a huge stickler. I mean, it came down to the wire to see, what engine they're going to go with, all because of that fuel efficiency. But the quantity and upgrade kits, was a quick, I think, decision just because how well engineer framed things and manager quickly said, we overpromised on that. We're going to have to start from zero. And so we quickly found a common ground with that. But I think one thing that probably hurt Regency a lot was not touching on the purchase amount. We left that for the last 15 minutes, and I think Oceanwide just quickly went down to their best cost at 100 million. And if we maybe negotiate that a little bit better and saying, we're willing to come down for that 150 price, they made it have been willing to move a little bit better with that number as well. Kind of going over the uncovering surprises, I felt Regency was very prepared. They felt comfortable out there. They didn't seem like there was any surprises on either side, really. They did their preparation quite well. And so, they were not unbothered by anything that came up during that negotiation. And in the end, despite some records on both sides. I think there may have been some disagreements, but the final buzzer beater decision that Regency thought they agreed upon was 105 million purchase price, supplying all X turbines, only doing 20 turbines for the upgrade kits, and delivering with 1 year. And with these stipulations, the Regency side with manager Dave Bellman and engineer, they were all satisfied. Dave was looking for an inclusion of the X turbines. Engineer was really looking for that cost of this new deal to be lower than a certain amount. I believe it was like 90 million or something of that sort. And manager just wanted to make sure that every person on his team kind of agreed with the deal and made sure that it made sense to move along with this deal with Oceanwide. And it was a very close call. They were going between lines between the X turbines and the D turbines at the end. But the last second we were able to talk with their leader on Oceanwide and got a deal last second. With that said, there's some takeaways I think Regency can, improve upon moving forward as they go on to future negotiations. From my perspective, my one big takeaway for them is, preparation is important, especially in these complex negotiations. You can't just go out there and wing it. And we've seen this with multiple different negotiations and different teams. If you try to go out there, wing it, not have a plan, you're going to get used with your information, and the team that's more prepared is going to come out with a better deal. I think that preparation meeting beforehand, they're able to discover their interest from their internal team and kind of prepare and see what interest the other team might have. And, we talked about this earlier, but they weren't surprised when they came into that negotiation. So I think that really helps out. Hartwell, what's your one takeaway?
Yeah, I think this leads right into the development role where, there was no real monetary value included for the from the R&D side and their desire to deploy those X turbine systems and engines. And so, the company's future is riding on the line, but that's not necessarily denominated in a $1 million value for this specific negotiation. But there was certainly a lot on the line in regards to those lab tests and the fuel efficiency numbers. So yeah, it's good to take into account things for the future, which may have, not necessarily little or no value for this specific negotiation, but still will help move things forward in the future with this company and their development.
For sure, for sure. And Anthony, what was your kind of key takeaway for Regency team?
Yeah, I think the key take home was managing time is really important for complex negotiations. They can take a lot of time and when the Regencies play, they really, like you said, Spencer, only got to the total purchase price in the last 15 minutes. And there was some creativity happening at the end, but it got really condensed and because of the buzzer, just things didn't get entered into the system correctly, and so things can get crunchy at the end there if you don't manage time effectively. And one other thought would be that when you have sort of variable projections about the future, where there's lack of certainty around,
Hmm.
for example, our fuel efficiency, we could have considered a strategy, or Regency could have considered a strategy like placing bets. So adding some kind of a variable payment depending on what was the realized fuel efficiency. I think that could have been a way to meet both parties' interests without getting anyone into a corner.
I agree. I agree. Well, I just want to thank you, Hartwell and Anthony, for kind of coming on the show, taking a look at what Regency did during this negotiation. And hopefully they can take notes about this and have more success moving forward. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.